In the Victorian era in Britain, in a squalid village, lived an intelligent young man named Jude, who harbored big dreams of receiving an education in school. However, at that time, for common folk, the opportunity to obtain an education was something very difficult to come by. Young Jude spent his days farming and playing, just like other children his age. Despite this, the dream of pursuing an education never left Jude's mind, even when he grew older and worked as a stonemason. Jude remained committed to seeking knowledge, and after work, he diligently read books to deepen his understanding. One day, in the course of his life, Jude met a beautiful girl named Arabella. The girl took the initiative to introduce herself to Jude, a meeting that seemed destined to happen. After that first encounter, Jude and Arabella often spent time together, chatting and getting to know each other better. Jude frequently shared his dreams with Arabella, particularly his desire to go to a big city to pursue a better education. One day, they visited a farm managed by Arabella's family. It was on that farm that their growing love blossomed even more. Not long after, Jude and Arabella decided to get married. The wedding was attended by the entire village, who joined in celebrating the young couple's happiness. That night, Jude and Arabella celebrated their first night together, strengthening the bond of love they had built. 5 months after their marriage, Jude began to feel that his marriage was losing its meaning. In a state of deep uncertainty, Jude visited his mother's house and, with a heavy heart, expressed his unhappiness living with Arabella. His mother, with wisdom, advised Jude to endure, reassuring him that their household was actually fine, and that perhaps what Jude was feeling was just a temporary boredom. However, when Jude returned home, he found that Arabella was not there. On the door hung a letter written by Arabella, stating that she had decided to leave for Australia and would never return. It seemed that Arabella, too, felt Jude's unhappiness and chose to end it in a drastic way. The next day, Jude left his village and headed to a large city called Christminster. There, Jude resumed his work as a stonemason, a profession he had been engaged in since his days in the village. One day, while visiting a shop, his attention was drawn to a beautiful woman working there. The woman captivated Jude's interest, but he was too nervous to greet her. Until the following day, while at work, the woman approached Jude. To his surprise, Jude discovered that the woman was Sue, his cousin who had been living in the city for a long time. Sue was a sociable woman, and although it was their first meeting after many years, Sue easily adapted to Jude and even to his colleagues, creating a warm and unawkward atmosphere. As time passed, Jude and Sue often spent time together, and unknowingly, feelings of love began to grow in their hearts. However, these feelings did not escape the notice of Jude's colleagues. One day, they teased Jude, saying that he and Sue made a good match, although their status as uncle and cousin made the relationship feel complicated. On a gloomy afternoon, Sue informed Jude of her intention to leave the city. Sue revealed that she had lost both her job and her place to live. Hearing this, Jude made every effort to convince his cousin not to leave. Jude offered to introduce Sue to an old acquaintance, Philotson, who happened to be running a public school. They quickly arrived at Philotson's school. Jude introduced Sue as an intelligent woman seeking to apply as a teacher there. Perhaps out of consideration for Jude, Philotson eventually accepted Sue as a teacher, even though the school's finances were unstable, meaning Sue would receive only a low salary. Sue began teaching the local children, and over time, she grew closer to Philotson. One day, during a heavy downpour, as Jude was planning to pick up Sue, he accidentally witnessed a startling scene. Under a single umbrella, Sue was seen holding hands with Richard. Although Sue was his cousin, Jude began to realize that he had fallen in love with her. That night, Jude received a response letter from the university he had long dreamed of attending. The letter informed him that he had been rejected due to his background as a stonemason. This failure left Jude feeling devastated. In his despair, Jude invited his colleagues for a drinking session, and the next day, he decided to return to his hometown. Upon arriving home, Jude was met with scolding from his mother, who accused him of being uncommitted and easily discouraged. His days were spent alone in his room, buried in books, yet thoughts of Sue continued to haunt his mind. A few days later, Jude resolved to return to the city with a strong determination to pursue Sue, despite their being cousins. Upon arriving in Christminster, Jude immediately sought out Sue, and they spent time together searching for a new apartment. That evening, Sue arrived at Jude's apartment soaking wet. Sue explained that her apartment landlord had locked her out for returning too late after helping Jude look for a place to stay. Jude allowed Sue to come in and offered her dry clothes. Due to the heavy rain in the late hour, Jude asked Sue to stay the night at his apartment. Sue appeared quite forward when she asked Jude to sit beside her. Although Sue seemed resigned as she fell asleep on a chair, Jude decided to leave and sleep in his own room. The next morning, Verlotzen visited Jude at his workplace. It turned out that Verlotzen had learned that Sue had stayed at Jude's place the previous night. Jude also expressed that he liked Sue very much and cared for her. However, Jude successfully convinced Verlotzen that there was no romantic relationship between him and Sue, as they were merely family. That night, Jude recounted the incident to Sue. Sue was not surprised to hear it, as Richard had been asking her to marry him for months. The conversation shifted when Jude admitted that he was actually married to a woman named Arabella, although they were not yet officially divorced. Hearing this, Sue's expression clearly showed her displeasure and jealousy. Without saying much, Sue left Jude's apartment, citing an urgent matter. Once again, Jude failed to express his true feelings to Sue. That night, Jude could only cry alone in his apartment, lamenting his failure. The next day, Sue deliberately provoked a reaction from Jude by informing him that she had accepted Verlotzen's marriage proposal. Furthermore, Sue asked Jude to be her attendant on the wedding day. Despite his heart being filled with disappointment, Jude managed to hide his emotions in front of Sue and Verlotzen, maintaining a blank expression and responding calmly, as if he were happy for his cousin marrying Verlotzen. On the other hand, Sue, who did not truly love Verlotzen, appeared very anxious and sad as her wedding day approached. It was as if, deep in her heart, Sue hoped that Jude would rescue her from the situation, but Jude seemed unaware of the signal Sue was giving. At the wedding, Jude encountered Arabella again, who was now living in Christminster and working as a barmaid. That night, as they were still legally married, they found themselves entangled once more. After that night, Jude and Arabella officially divorced. Jude returned to his hometown, where he found his mother in poor health. She had learned that Jude was in love with Sue and deeply regretted that her son lacked the courage to express his love and marry Sue. Shortly after, his mother passed away, and Sue attended the funeral, although she could not stay long since she was now Verlotzen's wife. The following morning, Jude received a letter left by Sue. In the letter, Sue confessed that she knew Jude had feelings for her, and she too had feelings for him. However, due to their mutual selfishness in not being able to express their love, fate ultimately separated them. At the end of the letter, Sue asked Jude to forget her, as she would also try to love Verlotzen as she had loved Jude. Several years passed after that incident, and Jude returned to Christminster to meet Sue and inform her that he would be moving to Schatzen in a few days. Upon hearing this news, Sue blamed Jude for deciding to go to Schatzen, as if he had given up and fully surrendered her to Verlotzen. The situation became more complicated when Sue told Jude not to give up on winning her over. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Verlotzen, who invited them to dinner together and offered Jude to stay at his house. That night, Jude couldn't sleep because he heard the sound of crying. Jude found Sue weeping by the fireplace. Apparently, Sue could no longer contain her emotions after learning that Jude would be leaving her. They eventually confessed their love for each other and engaged in a physical relationship in secret, behind Sue's husband, Verlotzen. The next day, Verlotzen summoned Jude to the school where he taught. Verlotzen had already discovered what had happened the previous night between Jude and his wife, Sue. However, after realizing that his wife had never truly been happy since their marriage, Verlotzen came to the understanding that Sue did not actually love him. With a heavy heart, Verlotzen decided to let Sue go and give her to Jude, hoping that Sue would find genuine happiness with the man she truly loved. Time passed, and Jude and Sue now lived together, spending nights filled with passion and happiness. However, one day, a letter arrived from Arabella, Jude's former wife, revealing that she had a child with Jude, whom she named Jude. The child had been living with his grandmother in Sydney, but the grandmother was no longer able to support Jude. Jude and Sue warmly welcomed the child as if he were their own, with Jude's presence bringing a new color to their happiness. A few months after Jude's arrival, Sue gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, whom they named Lizzie. Their small family seemed happy, with Sue often helping Jude in his work as a stone carver, while Jude lovingly took care of his little sister. However, their happiness did not last long. Jude was dismissed from his job after the landlord discovered that Jude and Sue were not married, despite living together and having children. Losing that job forced Jude and Sue to constantly move from one town to another, hoping not to be recognized and judged for their relationship status. Eventually, they settled in a rural village and made a living by selling bread. There, they encountered Arabella again, who had now become a wealthy woman after inheriting from her new husband. Arabella approached Jude to reconnect with her son. A few years later, Jude and his family returned to Christminster. However, their move this time was filled with much drama and eviction from every apartment they stayed in. Their financial situation worsened with the addition of new family members, making life increasingly difficult. One night, Jude couldn't sleep and went to his parents' room. There, he saw how exhausted Jude and Sue were from taking care of their family. Jude approached Jude and tried to explain their very limited financial situation, apologizing for not being able to provide a better life for Jude. However, deep in his heart, Jude felt that he had become a burden to his father and mother. Filled with sadness, Jude decided to take Lizzie, his little sister, to end their lives together with their baby sibling, hoping that their parents could regain the happiness they once had when they first met Jude. After losing all their children, Sue began blaming herself and felt that her relationship with Jude had been punished by God. Sue ultimately decided to leave Jude and return to her husband, Philotson. However, in the end, it is evident that Jude still deeply loves Sue, and Sue still loves Jude. Though they cannot be together, their love remains, binding their hearts in everlasting memories. And so, that's the end of our story today, friends. Although there were sudden time jumps, the film is still worth watching. I hope you enjoyed the story. See you next time.